So welcome back to the James Winkwood Racing channel. As you can see, today I'm in the garage, so a bit of a different style again for this video. After a long winter's waiting, I'm absolutely raring to go and I can't wait to get back out on track. And for me, fortunately, that is this week. So this is my last day to get the car sort of race prepped and ready to go. So in myself, I've already done a bit of a plan. I know exactly what I want to do when I'm at the track. I've got a run plan already written out, but I want to make sure that the car is absolutely ready to go as well. So today I'm going to show you through how I would do a race setup, a flat patch setup sometimes people call it, but fundamentally we're just going to put the car on a flat level surface and lay some strings around it, and then you can measure the static camber and toe, which we can do for all four wheels. You can also, unfortunate enough, I've got some corner weight scales, so I can also put it on corner weight scales and I can measure the weight on each corner. Of course, for all of this it's important to have the driver weight considered. Ideally you'd be sitting in it yourself and have someone else to do the measurements. Unfortunately I don't have that opportunity. I'm here on my own today, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to ballast the car. I'm going to sit in it first, look at what the scales are reading, then I'm going to ballast the car accordingly, and that means I can get out and leave the weight in the car to represent the driver, and from there we'll be able to do the same. I can personally then do all the measurements as if I was sat in the car.
James Winkwood steals it!
First things first, I need to get the car into the race setup that I'm expecting to use. At the moment there's no front anti-roll bar on here, and I'm expecting to use one on Thursday. So first thing I'm going to do is fit the roll bar, and then the next thing will be to get it up onto a flat level patch. So first things first is to fit the roll bar. For the caterham, that entails one of these. So as you can see, I've got two options here. I've got another two as well, but these show the differences. So if I put these side by side, you can see there's a very different thickness to them, and they're identified by the colours of the bushes. So I've got an orange and a green. The thicker this bar, the stiffer it is. Pop that down. So basically what this does is it couples the two wheels together. So as one wheel comes up, the other side forces the other wheel to come up at the same time, and that kind of across the front axle, it means that as the car rolls and leans effectively relative to the car body, one wheel is going up and the other one is going down, and so this provides a resistive force that prevents it doing that quite so easily, and it changes the handling of the car. Basically, the stiffer the roll bar, the less grip at that end of the car and the more grip at the other end of the car. So if I was getting understeer, I might go down to a really thin bar at the front like this orange one, or potentially even take it off altogether. If I'm getting oversteer, then I'd do the opposite and I'd go up to the thick green one that I just showed you, and that way I'd balance the car. Of course, I could also do the same thing at the back where there's another roll bar. It's done slightly differently on the caterham, and that one it's not fitting different bars, it's a single bar with a different position for the link tube, for the drop link, sorry. But yeah, I'll leave that where it is for now, and I'm just going to fit the front roll bar. There we go, so the roll bar's all fitted now, so the car is effectively in the race spec. The rear roll bar is actually disconnected at the moment, but I'm going to leave it that way for this part of the setup, and I'll connect it later on. Okay, so the car's all set now. I've got the right roll bar on. Next thing to do is to get it up and on a nice flat and level surface with all four wheels at exactly the same height. I'm actually going to use the corner weight scales that I've got to do that, because I know that I can adjust them all to get them bang on. Okay, so the car's up on the scales now, but I still need to make sure that they're all exactly the same height. I use them in the same place every time, and they're in exactly the same positions with little circles around the feet, so they should be exactly right. But just to double check, I'm going to use these, which are two laser level sensors. If I put one on each scale, then the light beam that they send, if I turn that on, it's hard to see, you can see the point on the back of the wall maybe, but the light beam that this sends out should line up exactly with the beam from the other scale. Okay, so I'm just going to take you inside now. And hopefully you can see just here, there's two sets of lines on the back wall. You can see the two different points, and there's maybe 5mm between them. You're not going to get a very good idea of scale on there, I don't imagine, but they are a little bit split apart. So what I'm going to do is, although they're in the same places, there's obviously something slightly different, and there's obviously something slightly different. So I'm just going to adjust the feet. These feet are all on locking screws, so I can back off the locking screw, turn the whole stud up or down to get the plate higher or lower. And I'll use the spirit level to make sure that the plate is still horizontal and in the horizontal plane. So I'll have to do that. First of all, I'll work out which of the four is off, or which of these two is off, I should say. And then I'll adjust that one, keep it level, and then we're back to where we were. Okay, so it looks like it's this front wheel here that's a little, or this plate, I should say, that's a little bit too low. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just jack it up slightly on these feet, because they're the same thread all the way around. If I just count the flats, it should come up together. But then I'll double check it with the spirit level to make sure. Okay, so that's all set now, and we can start stringing up and doing the corner weights. Okay, so the car's all nice and level now. All four wheels are at exactly the same height. Effectively, it's on a flat piece of ground. Obviously, the garage isn't flat, but each of the scales is now at the same height and horizontal to all of the others. So the car's nice and evenly loaded on its own. Before I can string it up and actually start measuring, I need to take account for my own weight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll it back. At the moment it's on the sort of flat bit of the pads, not on the actual scales themselves. So I'm going to roll it back onto the scales. I'm going to sit in it myself and see what the corner weights are. And then I'm going to jump out, see what the corner weights are again, and then put some sand ballast in the driver's seat to allow for my weight. So that way it should be as if it was in its final state. It then should be as if it was on a flat piece of ground with the driver sat in it. and then we can start doing our setup at last. Okay, now at this point really I should be in my race kit with my helmet and everything so that it's perfectly as I would be racing. But I've done this enough times to know that if I put a 5-litre oil can behind my head, just on the back of the seat, that actually does the same thing as if I'm all kitted up with a crash helmet. So yeah, that's basically the weight of a crash helmet and hands device and race suit. There you go. Okay, so that's all ballasted up now, and I've moved some of the weights around so that the 4 corner weights are all the same as when I was sat in it. So that's basically now riding as if I was driving it. So I can start, 2 things I want to do today is do the corner weights, but also do the static camber and toe. And I'm going to do the camber and toe first because that may yet influence the corner weights. So I'll do that one first. Okay, so to string it up, we just need a parallel string down each side of the car, and it doesn't really matter where they're positioned as long as they're parallel to each other and parallel to the centre line of the car. There are different things that you can mount them off. You can get proper kits that bolt onto the car and mount them in exactly the right places. The cheapest way is literally just to run some string around 4 axle stands. It all works exactly the same once you get there, it's just some of them are a bit easier to set up. The main thing is that you don't knock any of the strings or anything they're mounted to whilst you're working. And the way I like to do it is actually mount it onto the car. So I've literally just made up a few frames myself, just cheap. Doesn't really matter if these are high quality, if they're bent or anything like that. It doesn't matter as long as you can mount a string on the outside of the car. So let's put the front one on. Okay, that one's fitted. Now I've got something similar that I'll use at the back. So with the string bars fitted, you only really need thread or string or anything along the side. I've splashed out a bit and gone for the BG Racing proper tools, which is fine. They're really easy to use, so I'm going to hook it over the front and run it to the back, nice and luminescent so you can see them easily. Right, so now I'm just going to measure up the strings to make sure that they are equal distance. You can't really measure to the centre line of the car very easily, but you can measure to the centre of each wheel hub. So that's what I'm going to do, and I've done it before, so I know there's a different track front and rear. So I need to measure 65mm at the back and 75 at the front. So I'm just going to do that now. Okay, so that's all squared up. So I'm now going to measure the distance from the front of the wheel to the string and the back of the wheel to the string, and that will tell me how angled each wheel is. Obviously you can add them together for the front axle and for the rear axle to get your toes. Okay, so the back's pretty square at the moment, which is how I like to run it. The front is actually towed out a bit because it was a wet race the last time I ran, so it's still set up like that. I'm going to bring that back down again to a more sensible dry setting. Before I adjust it though, I'm going to use this, which is a camber gauge. Turn it on and we can zero it pushed up against the wheel, and it will tell me what angle the wheel is at. Negative camber being tipped in at the front like you see on most race cars. And some of the sort of stanced road cars these days where they're really excessive negative camber. Positive camber will be pointing out on the top, which no one really runs anymore. So at the moment I've got some towing out at the front, which means the front of the front tyres are further apart than the back, so they're pointing away from each other. That helps to give you a bit more turn in the dry, but also in particular in the wet. And the last time I ran it was in the wet, so I've got quite a lot of tow out set up. I'm not expecting it to be wet this week, and I'm certainly not going to be planning a wet setup, so I'm going to turn up with a dry setup. So I'm going to bring that back down a bit, which means that the front I need to shorten can see the track rods, so the front track rods that go to the front of the wheel. So if I shorten that, it's going to pull the front of the wheel in. It's also going to have a small incidental change on the camber that I've measured, but it is fairly small, so I'll reset the toe, and then at the end what I'll do is I'll set everything up and I'll do all the corner weights and everything, and then I'll go around at the end and do a final recheck of everything that we've done. Okay, so that should be the front toe brought into spec now. So I've moved the front of the tyres back in again, so I'm going to measure it back to the string. First of all, I'll check that I haven't moved the strings in all the stuff that I've just done, so I'll do a quick check to each hub, and then again re-measure the front tracking. So the toe is exactly what I wanted, which is good. So the last part of the puzzle that I haven't done yet is ride height. So I've got this little gauge, just a little printed part, which I've actually made myself. And it allows me to measure the height from the floor, or in this case from the corner weight pad, the scale, to the bottom of the chassis. This one's on a thread, so you can wind it in and out and get it nice and accurate. I don't know if you can see, but it's just got some numbers in there so that you can read it off directly without needing to go and measure it again. Just makes it a bit easier and quicker at the track, but we'll do the job here too. Okay, I can't quite reach the bit of the chassis because it's off the front of the pad, but this is one of the advantages of doing it the way I've done with the strings, because it's all mounted to the car and not axle stands. I can actually roll the car backwards and all of the strings will move with it and stay in position. So I'm just going to roll it back a couple of inches and then I'll be able to measure the ride height. There's actually no piece of floor directly underneath the front for now, so what I've actually got to do is put a little bridge across, and then I've got a shorter ride height gauge to measure off this box section. It's better to do this one at the track really, where you can do it on an actual flat piece of land, because then you can use the proper rear ride height gauge on the front as well, but at least I can do this here in the garage. Okay, so I've gone through everything there now. I've got my driver, no driver ballast to start with, then we've got the toe camber, camber after adjusted, and ride height. And I'm happy with all those numbers. The last thing I'm going to do is check the corner weights. So again, I'll roll it backwards and forwards just to get it to settle. Bear in mind that now I've got the extra string kit on the car, so I'll have to take that off to get an accurate corner weight again. But just looking down this, I think I'm finished with the strings, so I can do that safely. So there you go, I hope you found that useful. That is how I would run through a flat patch setup, as people call it. In that case, I did all of the static setup, so that would be the camber, which is the sort of wheel angle to the vertical plane. I did the toe angles, which is again the wheel angle, but this time to the straight ahead position. And then I also did ride height and corner weights. They tend to be the major things that all cars can set up, or certainly most cars can set up. On top of that, you might have other aspects of car setup that are more dynamic, things like aerodynamics, wing angles, etc., etc. Sometimes you can move the weight around within the car, but as a kind of first go, a relatively simple home setup, then hopefully that gives you some ideas as to how you can do it. Nothing there is really very difficult either. Okay, admittedly the corner weight scales aren't the cheapest, so you might not have access to those, but other than that, there was nothing really there that you can't do at home. You can level the wheels yourself, make sure you've got a horizontal plane. Setting up the strings around the outside, as I said in the videos, you could do it just with 4 axle stands and some thread or string wrapped around it. So there's really nothing that should be putting you guys off. By all means, get out there and get the setup optimised for your own race cars. It really does make all the difference when we go racing. So I managed to do all of that ahead of my test event that I've got this week. And then in about 2 weeks' time, I've got the first round of the championship for me. So, as I said before, this year I'm going to be competing in the Caterham 310R Championship. And we've got round 1 at Donington Park. We're going to have 2, I think maybe even 3 races this year at Donington Park, all on the same weekend. So it's going to be an intense period. Hopefully my car is all set up and ready to go now, as you saw. So fingers crossed I'll be ready for some decent results. But certainly going to have a lot of fun doing it, I'm sure of that. Thanks guys, keep safe, bye.